It was meant to be just another bright afternoon at Florida's famous Bike Week, the state's massive annual celebration of motorcycle culture. But on March 8th, 2025, around 2 p.m., calm turned to chaos in an instant. At a racetrack gas station in New Smyrna Beach, the familiar roar of engines gave way to shouting and gunfire. Witnesses reported that dozens of bikers from two rival motorcycle clubs, the Mongols and the Warlocks, converged at the same location. Within moments, the argument escalated into violence. Customers ran for cover, parents shielded their children, and the gas station transformed into a battleground. What seemed like a random confrontation turned out to be the spark for one of the most extensive law enforcement crackdowns in Florida's history. In the months that followed, a multi-agency investigation unfolded, involving undercover surveillance, intelligence sharing, and a series of raids that would eventually become known as Operation Mongolian Beef. This wasn't just a dispute over pride or territory, it was a direct challenge to law enforcement authority, and the response would be both calculated and overwhelming. The incident at Bike Week. Every March, thousands of motorcyclists travel to Florida for Bike Week, an event that fills the streets with chrome, leather, and roaring engines. But in 2025, the gathering took a darker turn. That afternoon, members of the Warlocks arrived first, appearing calm as they refueled and socialized. Minutes later, several Mongols rode in. The two clubs have a long, violent history, and their encounter that day was no coincidence. Within minutes, shouting turned to gunfire. Panic spread as bullets struck vehicles in the surrounding area. Families dove for cover behind cars and fuel pumps. 2 people were shot. Both survived, but the event left the community shaken and furious. Law enforcement quickly realized this was not a random act. It had all the signs of an organized and premeditated clash. Surveillance footage, witness statements, and cell phone videos revealed coordination and planning. This was an intentional act of violence between 2 outlaw motorcycle clubs competing for control and influence. The legal response: Florida's new law. In the aftermath, investigators pursued a new strategy using Florida's aggravated rioting law, a relatively recent statute designed to target organized acts of public violence. Under the law, any riot involving more than 25 people, deadly weapons, and a threat to public safety qualifies as a second-degree felony, punishable by up to 15 years in prison. Prosecutors saw a clear fit. The confrontation at the gas station had involved dozens of armed participants in a public area filled with civilians. This was not a bar fight, it was a coordinated riot. For the first time, Florida authorities charged members of an outlaw motorcycle club under this statute. 28 Mongols were charged, not only those who fired weapons, but all who participated in the organized violence. The decision sent a strong message. Gang-related public violence would be treated as a serious, large-scale criminal act. Operation Mongolian Beef. Behind the scenes, investigators spent months building their case. The operation was named Mongolian Beef, and while the name drew attention, the scale of the law enforcement effort was extraordinary. Over a 4-month period, agencies gathered surveillance footage, phone records, and digital communications. What emerged was a detailed picture of a coordinated network of Mongols members involved in violent incidents across the state. The investigation linked the suspects to previous shootings in Titusville and Cocoa, as well as other criminal activities. Many had criminal records. Some were already known to federal authorities. On July 2, 2025, law enforcement struck. Nearly 200 officers from local, state, and federal agencies executed simultaneous raids across Florida and beyond. 28 Mongols members were arrested in coordinated operations spanning multiple counties, including Volusia, Brevard, Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, and Polk, with one arrest made in Virginia. During the raids, officers seized 38 handguns, 15 long guns, ammunition, narcotics, cash, and gang paraphernalia. The Mongols Clubhouse in Edgewater was raided, and its chapter president, Carlos Cardona Batista, was arrested at his home without resistance. The operation involved cooperation between numerous agencies: the FBI, U.S. Marshals, Homeland Security Investigations, and multiple sheriff's offices across Florida. The purpose and impact authorities made it clear that Operation Mongolian Beef was not just about making arrests, it was about dismantling an organization. By using the aggravated riot law, prosecutors could hold the entire group accountable, regardless of who fired the shots. This method allowed them to take down a significant portion of the Mongols' Florida structure in one coordinated strike. Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood called the operation a textbook example of modern law enforcement collaboration, emphasizing that public violence would not be tolerated. The message was direct. When gang conflicts endanger civilians, the response will be swift, strategic, and uncompromising. By the time the operation ended, an entire Mongols chapter had been dismantled. Their weapons were seized, their leadership arrested, and their presence in Florida effectively crippled. But authorities made one thing clear: this was not the end. The investigation remains active, and more arrests may follow. The events of March 8, 2025, proved that even a brief moment of chaos can ignite a far-reaching response. For the Mongols, the gas station shootout marked a turning point. The day law enforcement decided to fight back with unprecedented force. With suspects still at large and investigations ongoing, the impact of Operation Mongolian Beef was far from over. The Edgewater Clubhouse and SWAT raid. While arrests took place across Florida, one location stood out: the Mongols Clubhouse in Edgewater. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary commercial property, but investigators believed it was a central hub for the group's operations. For months, law enforcement quietly monitored the site, tracking patterns, vehicles, and visitors. Everything suggested it was much more than a casual meeting spot. As part of the operation, the Edgewater Clubhouse became a primary target. The goal wasn't only to arrest individuals, it was to send a message by striking the Mongols at their home base. In the early hours of July 2nd, 2025, while simultaneous arrests unfolded across the state, a specialized SWAT team moved in. Acting on intelligence that weapons could be present, officers executed a precise, silent approach. There were no sirens or warnings, only a fast, coordinated entry. Within minutes, the building was secured without gunfire or injuries. Inside, officers recovered documents, electronics, and gang-related materials. The raid ended quickly, but its impact was immediate. For years, this clubhouse had symbolized the Mongols' presence in the region. It hosted meetings and private gatherings that locals avoided. After the Bike Week shooting, pressure mounted to take action, and investigators believed decisions made inside those walls led directly to the gas station attack. The raid sent a clear message: no clubhouse is off limits. At the same time, multiple search warrants were executed at the homes of known members, including that of the Florida chapter president. He surrendered peacefully, but several firearms and incriminating materials were found. Searches in Volusia, Brevard, Miami-Dade, and Polk counties also revealed weapons and gang paraphernalia. Coordinating these simultaneous actions required extensive planning and accurate intelligence. The result was clear. The Mongols had been removed from their stronghold, and their Edgewater base stripped of influence. Authorities then began legal proceedings to seize the property permanently, arguing it had been used for organized criminal activity. For residents of Edgewater, the raid brought both relief and curiosity. Many had long viewed the clubhouse as an uneasy presence in their community. Law enforcement emphasized that this was just one step in a broader effort. Taking the clubhouse wasn't just symbolic, it was strategic. Removing both leadership and property meant dismantling the organization's foundation. With dozens of members arrested and their base dismantled, the Mongols' presence in Florida was severely weakened. Key figures and arrested members. Among those arrested in Operation Mongolian Beef were several high-ranking figures, including Carlos Cardona Batista, the Florida chapter president. Authorities believed he played a central role in coordinating the club's activities and the Bike Week confrontation. Many of those taken into custody were club officers or enforcers, responsible for carrying out orders, recruiting, and enforcing discipline. Several had prior criminal records involving weapons, drugs, and violent crimes. This wasn't a random roundup, it was a targeted strike against the group's operational core. Investigators also linked multiple suspects to previous shootings in Titusville and Cocoa, confirming that the Bike Week incident was part of a larger cycle of violence tied to turf disputes. 3 additional suspects remain at large, believed to be connected to the planning or execution of the gas station attack. Law enforcement warned they should be considered armed and dangerous. Prosecutors used Florida's aggravated riot statute, which allowed them to charge anyone involved in organizing or participating in the violence, not just those who fired weapons. This widened the scope of accountability and ensured that leaders and planners faced serious penalties. As court appearances began, prosecutors pushed for high bonds, citing the threat to public safety and the organized nature of the violence. The arrests disrupted the Mongols' leadership and communications, leaving the chapter fractured and disoriented. The Mongols Motorcycle Club and its history. The Mongols Motorcycle Club was founded in 1969 in Montebello, California, by Hispanic Vietnam veterans who were denied membership in other clubs, particularly the Hells Angels. What began as a small brotherhood evolved into an international organization. Over the years, the Mongols gained a reputation for violence, drug trafficking, extortion, and weapons violations. The FBI classifies them as an outlaw motorcycle gang. Their most notorious rival has long been the Hells Angels, with decades of deadly confrontations between the two groups. In Florida, however, their conflict with the Warlocks Motorcycle Club became the driving force behind the Bike Week 2025 violence. Their previous major takedown, Operation Black Rain, 2008, resulted in dozens of federal arrests, and even an attempt to strip the club of its logo. Despite such efforts, the Mongols endured, expanding nationwide through a decentralized structure that made them difficult to eliminate entirely. By 2025, Florida had become one of their strongholds, and their public show of force during Bike Week reflected that power. Operation Mongolian Beef was therefore seen as one of the strongest pushes yet to dismantle their influence. What it means and what comes next. The Bike Week shooting and subsequent raids revealed how deeply organized motorcycle gangs have embedded themselves in communities across America. For decades, these groups operated under a code of loyalty and silence, but the public nature of the New Smyrna Beach shooting shattered that illusion. Operation Mongolian Beef wasn't just an investigation, it was a declaration. Law enforcement made it clear that open violence would be met with swift, coordinated, and overwhelming action. Using new laws like the aggravated riot statute, prosecutors held not just the shooters accountable, but everyone involved, leaders, planners, and enforcers. The result? 28 arrests, multiple raids, and the dismantling of an entire chapter of a national outlaw motorcycle club in a single day. But the work continues. With suspects still at large and new evidence under review, law enforcement vows to maintain pressure, For the Mongols and other clubs like them, the message is unmistakable. Violence in public spaces will no longer go unanswered. The Bike Week 2025 incident began as a few moments of chaos at a gas station. It ended as one of the largest coordinated crackdowns on organized motorcycle crime in Florida's history, and it may only be the beginning.